computer. As I said, today we are going to be talking about chapter 13. And chapter 13 is about something we call the repeating structures. Now, last class we talked about selection structures. And we talked about the if and the if else and the if else if. And then we talked about uh, all the applications that you can utilize the if statement with. And we said it's just very similar to the same concept that we have with programming, with whatever programming language you're talking about here. We always have that if statement. And with programming languages, we simply have a Boolean expression that's going to be evaluated to true and false. And based on the evaluations, you're going to be selecting what branch of script or program is going to be executed. But we said with the bash scripting, we do have those expressions, but we don't refer to them as Boolean most of the time. They're simply commands in most of the time. And those commands are going to have a exit status of 0 or 1. 0 indicates that the expression or the command was executed with no errors. And then if the exit status is 0, you're going to perform some action. If it's 1, you perform some other actions in the case of if-else statements. Today, we are going to go and we're going to learn about repeating structures. And repeating structures, simply, we refer to them as loops. And the same concept that is available in programming is simply available in bash scripting. Loops are simply a branch, a block of code that you are going to want to be executed for a number of times. Okay, so it's simply by writing multiple commands or a single command for that matter, and you take that command and you simply execute it, or those commands, you execute them for a number of times. Now, that number of times relies totally on the application that you have. I'll give you an idea here just for you to understand. Let's imagine you have a file, and then that file, you have, let's say, 500 lines. And what do you want to do? You want to read each line individually and process each line in a very specific way to extract some piece of information. So how do we get that job done? Okay, we can actually have a loop that's going to go through the lines of that file one by one. And for each line that you're going to read from that file, you process that line to extract the information that you're looking for. And that process is simply going to be repeated for every single line. So that's where the repeating structures are coming from, the name. Now, in bash scripting, we mainly have 3 different ways to get the job done. We have for loops, we have while loops, and we have until loops. Now, the while loops and the until loops are very simple, very short when we're going to cover them. They're not that big of a deal. They're simple, they're easy. But the for loop is the one that is utilized a lot. It has a lot of applications, and most of the chapter is going to focus on the for loops. Now, when it comes to for loops, we are going to use some tools to decide how many times you want the loop to iterate. And those tools are numerical ranges. For example, you tell me, I want to start with number 1 all the way to number 10. And then we can go with list. You can create a list of items and you're going to go through them one by one. Or you can have arrays, which we covered in the previous chapter, the chapter after that, before that. You can use the output of a commands to control a loop. And finally, you can go through the content of a directory. Like, for example, if you have a folder, inside the folder, there's folders and files. You can have a loop that goes through all these files and all these directories in your directory. So with that being said, we are going to start and we're going to jump straight to the for loop in a very, very basic matter. And let me start sharing my screen. And here we go. So today I decided to get everything ready before I jump into before the class, so I don't waste some time trying to manage to make it work. So we do have this file called newloops.sh, and I do have the basic structure of any what we call any bash script file. So the for loop, the syntax of the for loop goes as following. You start with the keyword for. Wait a minute, let me just get inside the insert mode. Yes, for, and then after that, you will have a variable. Okay, Now that variable, we'll talk about that variable for, and then you put in, and you have values. Now, what are these values? It's something we're going to cover later. Now, this is again, this is not the loop. This is not going to work. I'm just showing you the syntax. So you start with the for, you have a variable, and then in values. Now, what is those values? We are, of course, going to talk about them when we get to each one of those different types of loops. Once you're done with that, you type do. And you go to the next line, and then after that, you give it a tap. This is an optional, of course. And in this case, you type the command that you want it to be repeatedly executed. Okay, and mostly it could do something with the variable itself. And once you're done, you type done, and you're done with your loop. So this is, again, the syntax of the loop. Now remember here, the variable is the val. Let's talk about the values for this time. The values, again, we have, as I said, many different options when it comes to values. It could be a list of items, a numerical range. For example, the values could be from 1 to 10, from 1 to 100, from 1 to million. You decide, depending on what you're trying to do. It could be a list of words, or it could be an array. And again, as I said, it could be the output of a command. That output command will simply produce multiple words or values, and you can use them. The point that you need to understand here, with every single loop, with every single iteration, the variable var will hold a value from the values. Okay, so if the values, let's say, were 1, 2, 3, 4, at the beginning, var is going to equal 1, and then when you complete processing and completing the command, you go and var is going to equal 2, and then 3, and then 4, and then 5. So var, the value itself, is going to change every time you go with an iteration. Okay? So now that we know, and by the way, let me just make sure that I can put the chat in front of me. If you have any question at any time, feel free to type in the chat box, or if you just unmute yourself and ask your question. So with that being said, let's move on and let's talk about the first type of loops, which is using numerical range. The idea is very simple, very straight. I can say, for example, instead of var, let's call it num. And here I'm going to create a list of items. And those items, you simply type a curly brace, and you tell me what will be the first value. For example, my first value is going to be 3. And again, this is me just choosing a number. And then you put 2 dots, and you tell me what will be the last value. For example, I will go with 12. Why am I choosing those numbers? Again, those are just for the sake of practicing. Now, with that being said, now I know that num will hold the value of 3, and then 4, and then 5, and then 6, and then 7, and then 8, all the way to 12. And now what I need to do, I'm going to come to the command part here, and I'm going to change that. And instead, what I'm going to do, I'm going to say, for example, echo -n $num, and let me put double quotations here. Now put an extra space here and keep it that way. And at the bottom here, let's type an echo with nothing, so it's going to go to the next line. So what's going to happen here? By the way, the -n simply means don't go to the new line. So all the numbers that are going to be printed are simply going to be printed in the same line. And what am I going to do here? I'm just going to show you what's the value of num as we go through that range of values. Okay? And let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to exit the insert mode, WQ, and here we go. Let me clear. And let me run that program. And here we go. You can see 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, all the way to 12. Okay. Now, of course, I can do a lot more than just that. For example, if I want to multiply the numbers by 10, so I could come here and create a square bracket. Oh, wait a minute. Let me go ahead. Square bracket, and in this area here, we're going to multiply that by 10. Close the square bracket, and we have the space. And then all of it is going to be with a $sign. So let's give this a try and see how is that going to work. WQ. And if I go run it again, and you can see here now, every one of those numbers were simply multiplied by 10. Again, there is no specific purpose of what I'm doing here. It's just for practicing. And that's how we work. Now, We do have more options that we can go through. By default, the step size for this range of values is 1, but if you choose to make it different, you can come here and put 2, for example, and this is going to be the step size. And step size simply means that instead of going 3, 4, 5, 6, you're going to go 3, skip 4, go to 5, skip 6, go to 7, and so on. Of course, you can skip 2 numbers if you want. 3, 4, 5 is going to be skipped, and you go to 7, and so on. So this is the step size that you can choose. Um, just because we're having a range doesn't necessarily mean that you have to go from the smallest value to the greatest value. You can start from the greatest value, go to the smallest value, and use a negative as a step size. But there's no point of showing that. I'm just going here to show you that this is how it works. And let me go ahead and give this a try. And now if you run it, you notice that I'm going to be skipping 40 and 50, 70 and 80, and 100 and 110. And you can see that now I got 30, I got 60, and I got 90, and I got 120. So this is the basic form of how do we use for loops. This is the first example with ranges. It's very straightforward. The syntax is very simple, not that big of a deal. And what we can do, let me just go back here because I just want to make sure that I will cover everything here. Those numbers, if you don't like them, you can actually have them in a form of variables. So I'm going to come here and say variable 1 equal 3, variable 2 equal 12, and then variable 3 equal 3. We got variable 3 2 times. Okay, no problem. Then after that here, you can replace this with a $sign, variable 1, $sign, variable 2, and $sign, variable 3. Now, you may ask, what's the point of that? Later in the future, there will be a chapter where we're going to perform and learn how do we do input operations. And when it comes to input operations, instead of just assigning values like 3 and 12 and 3 directly to these variables, we can let the user assign values to them. So with that being said, I can go back here, QW, and run it again. And oops, what did you don't like about that? Oh, the $sign. I forgot the $sign for the last one. Oops, and the $sign. Okay, that should work. Let's go back again. Oops. Oh, he still doesn't like it. Let's see, stacks operated, expected an error token. Oh, that's weird. Why are you doing this? It should work. Operate expected. Error token is. Oh, okay. I guess I'll just go back to the original case. I'll try to figure this out later. Why is he complaining? var1, var2, var3. Yeah, I don't see a reason why he would not like it. Any questions? Okay, let's take this and put it back. 12. Let's put this as 1. Let me take those away. Let's keep it simple for now. Okay. Let's try run it again. And now it's working. Okay, that's good. Let's move on and talk about another style of loops using range of values. Oh, not necessarily using range of values, but there's another type of loops in bash scripting. It's called the C style for loop. And the C style for loop simply means creating a loop that is very similar to how C programming language create loops. And the idea here is that it's very simple and very straightforward. Again, if you have a background in Java or C++, this should be a piece of cake. So how would this work? Well, let's start with this. First of all, you start with the for keyword, and you have to open. It's a little bit different. Instead of just 2 parentheses, it has to be double opening and double closing parentheses. And then after that, you come here and there will be 3 fields that you have to populate here. The first field is your initial variable. For example, I will go a equal 1. And the last one is the increment operation. So I will say a equal a plus 1. And in the middle, you will put your Boolean expression, and you'll say, for example, a is less or equal 10. So this is how a for loop will look like using a C style. Now, before I continue, let me just explain what is the point of all this. Number one, a is my first variable. It's usually we're going to use an a as a counter, and we're going to start with a equal 1. And we're going to say, as long as a is less than 10, I want you to continue in that loop. Okay. In the previous example, we were taking the values from the range one by one and assigning them to num. Here, we have a value that we started with, which is a, and then we're going to compare a to another value. And as long as this Boolean expression here is true, the loop will continue. Of course, if a will be kept as 1, then this condition is going to be always true. You'll end up having what we call an infinite loop. So what we need to do, we need to update a every time we go in the process. And here's where a is going to be updated, where a is going to be increased by 1. So we're going to start with 1, and then you're going to go to 2, and then you're going to go to 3, and 4, and 5, and 6, until you get to the 10. Now, the idea is very simple. All you have to do is to type do again. And here you type your command, echo, for example. I want to do the same thing here. $, a, show me a, and put a space after that, and then type done. And then after that, echo. This is, again, the last echo is just to go to the new line. Now, if I run it, you will notice that it will show me from 1 to 10. And of course, just like here, if you don't want it to be increased by 1, you can simply make it increase by 2. So you're going to skip a value. Let's go back here. And so on. Now, if I just quit again, run it, and you'll see that I'm skipping a value. Now, again, if you have any background in C or Java or C++, you would notice how familiar this form of loops are. So we got the first loop here when we use ranges. This is where we use the C style of creating loops. Now, at this point, I can tell you again, we are not talking about real applications. It's more about showing the syntax and how does it work. Later on, we're going to get into some sort of applications and see how we can utilize them to get something actually something useful done. Now, we're going to move on and talk about static lists. Now, static lists is very simple and, again, very, very similar to what we have been doing here. The idea is very simple. What I'm going to do, I'm going to come here and say for name in, and I'm going to start listing names. So I'm going to go, for example, John. And you know what? Yeah, let's keep it simple. No need for spaces. John, Mike, Smith, Ali, Adam, Steve. Well, let's just keep it simple. So here we go. This is for name in this list of names. This is what we call a static list. After that, remember here, the syntax is going to be the same, do. And then after that, you can go here and say echo -n, and then you type the $, name. And of course, again, if you want to add an extra space, and close it, and then of course, done, and then echo again to go to the new line. So this is, again, what we mean by a static list. You can actually list the names of these, the list of the names that you have here. You can, one by one is going to be assigned to name, and it's going to be printed on the screen, and so on. Okay, so that's, again, how it works. Let me just give this a try before I move on. If I go here and run it, you can see here all the names are printed, okay, one by one. Now, just to let you know, again, sometimes this is the purpose what I'm doing here. I'm just printing these numbers. But again, I showed you in this example here that you can process the values that you're reading here. you can do whatever you want to do to it. You can check if it's great, if it's less, if it's whatever you want to do, you can do it here. For names, for example, you can check one by one and do some tests for these names. What I'm trying to say here is that the point here is not just to print the names as they are. The point here is to have access to each name individually and being able to process it. And in this case, my processing simply just implies that me printing them. But again, that not be the case all the time. Now, one of the problems that we may have here, like what if we have someone that has one of those names that are two words? For example, John Mike. Well, we can put double quotations here. And let's see what's going to happen if we do it that way. Okay, let's go ahead and get out and run it. Well, you know what? I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to tell if he just showed me John Mike as it is. Let me just go and add something to this. I'm going to put an asterisk here as an indication to the end of the word. Okay, now let's exit. And now let's run it. And you can see here, you got asterisk. So we were able to put them together. So again, double quotations simply means you can surround multiple words together. Again, one of the biggest issues that we had is that whenever you have a mix and match between those double quotations. Okay, so that's going to be an issue if you want to do that. But in general, that should not be a problem. Like we usually don't have that issue. What do I mean by that? What if I want to use a comma here for any reason? Oops, come on. Okay, let's quit. Okay, let's go insert mode. If I wanted a comma here, that's going to be an issue. That's going to be a problem. So we have to be careful whenever we want to mix and match between those commas. Let me take the double quotation away and put it back the way it should be. And let me take the asterisk away. And let me write, oh, wait a minute, not here, skip. Okay. Let's move on and talk about the fourth type of for loops. And the fourth type of for loops is very similar to what we have here. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to call a variable called names. And in names, I'm going to put a list of names using the double quotation. So I'm going to go with John again, Mike, Smith, Ali, Adam, Steve. Okay, so this is my list of names. It's actually, if you think about it, it's just a string that contains multiple words. And I'm going to come here and say for name in names. This way, the for loop is simply going to break down this string, and it's simply going to give me those words one by one. And I'll go do, same thing here, echo, -n, $, name, space, done. And then after that, echo. Now, if I quit and save my work, you should notice that I will get the same exact, oh, wait a minute. It's just showing me names. Oh, I think I missed something. Let me go back. I'm supposed to use the $sign here. Remember here, names by itself, it's a variable. So now let's go ahead and run it. And you can see here, I got the same exact results. Okay. So let's go back to the program itself. And one of the issues that you have to pay attention here for this case is what if you want to have uh let's say a backslash written, or what if you want to, yep, if you want to have a backslash. Sorry, if you want to have a double quotations within the double quotations that you have here. For example, for some reason, I want to put Mike between double quotations. Okay, now that will lead to some issues, of course, but if I want the double quotation to actually appear, we need to use the backslash. And this is, again, just for the purpose of that, I'm going to show you how Mike is going to be printed with the double quotations surrounding it. And here we go. You can see Mike in the second one is surrounded by that double quotations. Okay, so this is the fourth, I believe, or fifth type of loop. We got loop, loop, 2, 3, and 4. And we can continue, of course, with our fifth type of loop. Let me just make sure. Okay. Okay, now we're going to go and talk about arrays. We talked about arrays before, and arrays, again, it's a collection of values. And just to remind you about how arrays works, let me just quit here. For example, if I create an array, I will say the array, you open a parenthesis and close the parenthesis, and you start listing. I will say, let's just put values, X, Y, A, Q, anything, UI, TY. Those are just, again, elements in that array. Of course, it could be numerical values. For example, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, and 7. This is my array. If we want to have access to the items of the array, or we want to change the values of the items of the array, if I just echo, and let me show you here, AR, of course, I have to put a $sign here. You show me the first item in that array. If I want to change any value of those arrays, I just simply have to know the index of that value. So, for example, 1 is at index 0, 2 is at index 1, and so on. So to have access to any item, for example, I want to change the index of the first item. So I change the value, and I'll put 100. And now if I go back and say echo error, you will see it's going to show me the 100. So this is how we have access to the items in the array. If you want to show an item of an array, so echo, what you have to do is simply start with a $sign, open a curly brace, and then array, the name of the array, you open a parenthesis, you close it, and you tell me which element you want to show. For example, if I put 3, it should show me the value 4. And of course, don't forget to close the parenthesis, and you can see it's showing me the 4. This is, again, something we covered before, and this is just a reminder, reminding you about how to how do you have access, how do you process arrays. If I want to display all the items of an array, I just come here and replace the 3 with the @ and you'll see that I will get the values printed on the screen. So again, this is, again, just a reminder of what we had before. Now, let's see how can we actually use arrays here. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to use the same names that I had there. Same example with the name. So I'm going to come here and say names. Let's call this one names1. Okay, equal. Now, instead of putting everything in double quotations, we're just going to come here and put John, Mike, Smith, Ali, Adam, Steve. So this is my array. And we go for name in. And for the names, here's what you're going to do. You're going to have to start with double quotation and close double quotation. I know it's a little bit weird. And you put the $sign, and then you open the curly brace, and you close it. And then after that, you type names1. That's what we called it. I don't like the fact that I'm calling it names1, so I'm just going to keep it names. Okay. And you come at the end here and you open a curly brace and you close it and you put the, where is it? The at sign. Okay. And here we go. So this is how we have access to the elements. Now, previously it was just a strings of words, and we took every single word. Now we're putting the words in the form of an array. So do echo -n again, $ name with a space, and then done. And then let's echo again the $. Now, I'm not sure why all these double quotations are actually surrounded with those colors. Well, let me try to see if I go. That take them out? Not necessary. Search hit the top one, okay? Nope. Anyway, let's see if I can insert mode. Let's skip that. Let's save and leave. And now if I run the program again, you'll see that I get them all printed at the bottom, as you can see here. So let's go ahead and go back here. So this is how we deal with arrays. Very simple, very straightforward. Let's see what else do we have. We covered the arrays, we covered the lists, we covered the static list. I just have the PowerPoint in front of me so I can follow the instructions. The sixth, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So the next one is how do we use the output of a command to specify the iteration of a loop. So let me just have some extra space here so I can type at the top. And again, I'm pretty sure that you guys are noticing how the syntax is very close to each one of them. So what we're going to do in a case like this, well, I believe we might actually need to have a file to be able to run this program, this follow the next situation. So I do have a file here that I created for that purpose. Oh no, not here. List hyphen. And the file that I created, I think it's called names. So if I go back here and tap cat \names, and you can see here that I got 4 names here. Okay, so let's go ahead and utilize this file. Okay, but to be able to do that, oh yep, I think I can manage. I can manage to get this job done. So let's go ahead and go back to them. So what am I going to do here? Again, we are going to try to use the output of that file. So when you type cat names, it's going to show you the list of these names. And this is what I'm going to try to do. This is the output of the command cat, and I'm going to try to have access to it. There are some details that you have to pay attention to. And we're going to go through that in a sec. But let's just try to get this part done. So I'm going to come here and say names, again, equal. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to put the path to that file. Oh, I hope I remember. Was it called names or name? I'll just try with name and then we'll see after that. So that's the location, that's the file that I'm going to be simply using. And let me put it between double quotations. Later we'll see if it's name or names. And we say for name in, and look what I'm going to do. I'm going to open, I'm going to put a $sign here, and I'm going to open a parentheses and close them. And I'll say cat names. So names here, the variable names with a $sign, of course, here. This will give me names by itself. It's representing the path in the file itself. And then cat itself is going to view the content of that file. And every single one of the names in that file is simply going to be assigned to the variable name. So if I come here and type do, and now we'll go echo again, -n, and $names. with a space, and then after that, done, echo with a dollar sign. So let's see. Let's give this a try and see if that's gonna work. Hopefully, it will not complain about anything. It is names, so that's a good thing. Oh, he didn't like it. No such a file or directory. Let's see. Why is he doing that? I'm supposed to I think I might have to type the whole path for it. Let me try with that. Yeah, because this is the command. It will not be actually recognized. So let's go ahead and put the whole directory. So I'm gonna go start with home faculty slash al janab. Okay, and names. That should fix it. Let's go ahead and give it a try. And that didn't work. Let's see. Oh, yes, it worked. It worked. Actually, it worked. But I want you to pay attention. Look what was just printed on the screen. Oh, names, 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 names. So that actually didn't work. He simply took that instead of having access to the file itself. He did that. Oh, that's weird. Let's get back here and see why is he doing that. Faculty, it's home, faculty, Eljanab, and names.
I think you might need another slash in front of home.
Oh, yep, that's what I was thinking about. Let's give this a try. Oh, nope, he didn't like it. Okay. Let's go back and see what have we done. Let's put an I here. It would be a lot easier if I can put them in the same directory. So cat. Let me just try and see if names by itself it will work.
Oh, I think I see. So in the echo,
Okay.
you put names whenever
Names. Oh my
the
God.
variable that you declared was
Okay,
just
I see, I
name.
see, I see, I see. Faculty El Janab names. Okay, let's go ahead and take that S away. And let's get out of here. WQ. And let's run it again. Oh, now it worked. And you can see here, the last list of names are printed. So let me go clear again and let me run it again. And here we go. Now let me go back to the program itself and show you what's going on here. So I do have names as a variable that hold the path to the file names. And then what I did here, again, this is what we're covering at this point, is the output of cat. Cat by itself, it's a command. And whenever you type cat and you follow that with a file, it's going to show you the content of that file. Okay, so that's the content of the file of names printed on the screen. So I'm going to take the output of that command and use it in my loop. And that's simply what was done here. Now, the biggest issue that we have here is that what will be used to break down the string? Because again, after all, names is a text file that contains multiple lines of word. Could be a single line with space separated. So mainly, we use white spaces and tabs and new lines as a separator between those words. Those are the default values. So spaces, tabs, and new lines as a separator between the words, and then all the word that's going to be separated by a space, a tab, or a new line simply are going to be utilized word by word and used in that loop. Now, of course, there's a way that you can decide which character you want it to be used to separate them. So why am I saying this? Let me just go and out here. There's files that we use to process data. Sometimes the characters just get mixed. It's a CSV, I believe. SCV, CSV. It's an Excel file. And if you happen to deal with any of these files, you will notice that the data is presented in a form of column, one single column, but in multiple rows, and every single row contain multiple columns and each value is separated from the others with the semicolon. So if you want to process a file like that using the for loop with the output of a command, well, simply it's not going to work because it's just going to read the whole line for you instead of reading the lines, each line separated by those colons. So what we can do, we simply can actually decide what will be the character that you would like to use as a separator. It goes through a really, really long process. The first thing you have to do is there's a variable called the IFS, and that variable simply you have to set it to nothing, or you have to set it to whatever you want to use as a separator. Okay. And if you have multiple, you can actually have multiple of these separators if you choose to. Okay, and all you have to do is just surround, just again list them. Each character by itself is going to be treated as a separator. So I'm just going to show you an example here, which I don't have a file for that matter. But if you want to, for example, change the character, and as I said, by default, the characters are going to be space, tabs, and a new line. But you can actually decide, for example, if you want the dollar sign to be used as a separator, if you want the semicolon to be used as a separator, if you want the column to be used as a separator, if you want the double quotation to be used as a separator. You decide whatever you want. Now, how are you going to decide that? Simply, again, every time you want to process a file, before you actually process the file, you have to open the file and see how the data is organized inside the data, inside that file. And based on that, you choose what will be the character or will be the separator that you're going to go with. Okay. And the idea here again is just that you have to change the IFS. In the PowerPoint that we are using, there is an example of how exactly that's possible. I would like everybody to go have a look at it just for the sake of having an idea of how it should be done. Usually, again, it's recommended to keep the original IFS value backup on a side if you want to change it. And then once you're done with whatever separator that you want to choose, go back and assign the original one, the backup one, to the file that you have there. Okay, so we are moving on with for loops. And at this point, we're going to be talking about how do we navigate through, or sorry, how do we have for loop that goes through directory content? Okay, and the idea here is not that complicated, actually. It's very, very simple. And let's go to, oops, not you, to the file itself. Let's put I here. Let's go up a little bit. So what do? We say for file in, and look what I'm going to do. I'm going to come here and say home backslash faculty backslash al genab backslash and put an asterisk here. So what is that supposed to mean? It's simply going to go through this directory, and when you see the asterisk, it's simply going to go through all the files and directories inside that asterisk. You go do, and then after that, command, sorry, not command, my bad, echo -n, and let's see what will be $sign of file space done, and then echo double quotation. Let's just save the work. And I do have a lot of files, of course, in my directory, but I want you to pay attention to what exactly it's showing here. Not only it's going to show me the file, because again, this is the file, this is the file. Where is it? This is first time file. This is the GOLENV file, and so on. It's not only that it's showing me the file, it's actually showing me the full path to that file as well. So this is something you have to understand when you work on iterating through a directory, that by default it's not only going to show you the files, is going to show you the full path of the file. Now I know for sure there is a way that we can actually let the Linux to only show me the files. But before we get to that point, let's go ahead and have a look and see what can we do in this area here. So we can have access to those files. And remember, here is just simply going to show me all the files and all the directories. Now, not only this, but also if I choose to, I can have another directory if I want it to go through. So it's not necessarily a single directory. You can have another directory if you choose to. So that's an option that you simply have. Not necessarily one, it could be multiple. So that'll be number one. Let me just make sure that I get to the point because I want to show you only the files. I really don't want to go through the path itself. Yes, we can have a command called the base name. And when we use the base name, it's simply only going to show me the file itself instead of showing me the directory itself. So how do we do that? Well, let me just do that here. You simply come to the file itself. Now remember, your file by itself will show me the whole directory path. You open and you type base name space and close it. Okay, so base name simply will show you only the files or the directories inside that folder. And now I don't want to clear it. I want to keep it so you guys will see the difference. Oh, why is it showing me file only? Let me make sure that I got this right. Let's go back. I remember I got the same error when I was working on it. Okay, so we got file. Oh, I forgot. I have to put the $sign again with the file. This $sign that I keep forgetting. I have to put a $sign here as well. And now let's run it. And here we go. So those are all the files that I have in my folder. Now, again, the whole point here, again, not just for the sake of showing the files, but the purpose here is that I want to process those files. So here's what we can do. And this is, again, just a good example to show you that we can actually utilize if statements. Now, every single file in Linux storage spaces, files could be files or could be directories. So let me just exit really quick. And if I go and say list hyphen, and let me just go ahead and make it as list here. You can see here everything. Oh, I do have directories. That's a good news. So I do have directories, my files and new folders. Those are directories. So let's go back to my program and let's process this example here. So I want to actually check if the file that I'm reading is actually a file or it's actually a directory. And if it's a file, I'm going to type it's a file. And if it's a directory, I'm going to type it's a directory. The idea is very simple. All we have to do is inside the do, after the do, you go here, and let's go here and put an if statement here. Now, in this if statement, what I'm going to do, I'm going to check, and remember here, we use square brackets, and we have to have spaces. Always remember those spaces. We'll put hyphen D or hyphen F, depends on what you're trying to see here. Hyphen D, for example, and I will say double quotations, $sign, file. At this point, we're talking about the full path with the file itself. So I'm checking. If that file that I just read was a directory, what am I supposed to do here? I will say then, and I'll give this a tab. And I will say after this, I will come here and say whatever the name of that file will be, I will just type is a directory. Now, of course, if it's not a directory, then it's a file. But again, I can check just in case if, because we do have options, other options than files and directories. So we'll just come here and do the same thing. Oh, instead of D, we'll put F. And we'll put again the $sign file. Remember, there should be a space here. And then we'll go echo hyphen N. And let me take the hyphen N away because I actually want them to be underneath each other. And let's start with, again, $, base name, $, again, file is a file. And of course, this is the end of fi, and this is done for the loop, and I'm done. So here's what I'm doing here. I'm going to go through each one of the files that I have in the z00m folder, and I'm going to check if it's a file or it's a folder. If it's a folder, it's going to print the name of that folder or directory, followed by is a directory. If it's a file, it's going to be followed by is a file. So skip. Let me clear. Now run it. Oh, there is a problem. He didn't like the fi. That's weird. It should be okay. Syntax are near the unexpected token fi. Let's go back and see what's going on there. Oh, I think I know what's going on. Let's go here. I forgot that there's a then here as well. So let's go ahead and give it a try. And here we go. No, my file is a directory. New file folder is a directory, but he didn't do anything for the files for some reason. Let's go and see why the second case didn't work. Obviously, just the directories he was able to show them. So we got file and home directory, okay. If D file, okay. Oh, can you guys see it? It's a typo. Instead of file, I added an extra R here. And then let's go and try it again. And here we go. It worked perfectly fine. So you can see here, file.txt is a file. It's a file. It's a file. And here we go. This is a directory, file directory. And that's exactly what I know that I have in that folder. Clear. And let's go back to the Vim. And this simply is the end of the for loop. As I said, this file here does exist and it's available inside the server. You should have access to it if you choose to. I'll try to figure out a way if I can copy those files and send them to you, but I'm pretty sure you guys can have access to it directly. But I just wish if we can have access to them in the Windows. So if you choose to print them there. Anyway, let's continue now. And at this point, I can say that we are done with the for loops, and we're going to move on and talk about the while loops. And then after that, we'll talk about the until loops. Is it sure that I know where are we here? While loop. Yes. While loop. Well, the while loop, well, you will see also with the while loop that the syntax is not going to be very, very different than the for loops. But the idea here is very simple. What we're going to do, we will start with the keyword while. And then in this area here, you will have your command. And your command, usually it's a Boolean expression or a test. And the final output of that test has an exist status of 0 if it's true, or 1 if it's false. And based on the outcome of that, you will actually perform some task. So it's very, very similar to the if statement, if you think about it. It's going to perform some task, and it's going to keep going with that task until that expression that we have here between the parentheses will become false or will have an exist status of 1. So that's what you should know about it. So let's just go ahead and have an example of the while statement. Now, what I'm going to do, I'm going to come here and create a counter, set the counter to be 1. And in this area here, I will say while, and the command that we're going to use is $. And remember here, there should be spaces. Counter as a variable, as long as this one is less than or equal 10, put a space. As long as this condition is true, that the counter variable is less or equal 10, what we're going to do, we're simply going to print echo counter. And let's just put it in -n, $ counter with a space. And then we'll go done, and then echo again. Now, this is not right for a simple reason, because if I keep it this way, counter will always be 1, and I'll end up having a loop that we call infinite loop that will never stop. So after showing counter or processing counter with whatever you want to do, counter need to be updated. So we come here and type counter equal $ square brackets counter, now +1, +2, you decide how much you want to increase the counter with. And of course, I forgot that here counter also must have the $. Okay. I'm not sure if this is going to work without a spaces, but I think it should. Let me just go back to the top. Yeah, it should work. Wait a minute. I'm not even sure if I have to put the $ here. Let me just go ahead and give this a try and see if it's going to work or not, and then we come back after that and try to fix it. So let me take this one away. So my last loop is supposed to be numbers printed from 1 to 10, and here we go. We got them. So that actually worked. So that's the while loop. So as you can see here, all you have to do here is that, let me go back here. Let's go down a little bit. All you have to do here is to make sure that you know how to write this expression here correctly. And again, as long as this expression has an exit status of 0, that simply means it's going to be treated as true. Those two lines are going to be executed. Very, very important. Do not forget to update your counter. Otherwise, you will have a problem of an infinite loop. Now, of course, we can have multiple of these expressions using the and or the or logical operators. And in this case here, for example, I can repeat for a range of values as long as 10 is less than, as long as count is less than 10, and I can put another Boolean expression if I choose to. But the point here is that you can have a little bit more complicated expressions to be checked with the while loop. Okay, so that's how while loop simply works. It's very, very simple, very straightforward. Usually it will work perfectly fine with numbers, as you can see here, but also could be used with what I call checking for files. Sorry, strings. Okay, so that's the while loop. Now let's continue and talk about the until loop. And you can see here, we spend a really long time talking about the the for loops, but with the while loops and the until loops, they're simply going to be very simple and very obvious. Now, until loops, it says here, until loops actually works as the opposite of the while loop. So until will continue to run the commands, okay, until the control command return 0 exit status. So what is that supposed to mean? Let's go to the syntax first. I'm going to go with counter. This time I'm going to set it back to 1. And also until, okay, until, and I'll put my expression here. Until what? Simply means this is going to be repeated until this condition became true. So previously said, as long as counter is less than 10, keep going. And this time I cannot say as long as, I'm telling until $ counter equal, for example, 10. Let's see how is that going to work. Well, just give me, actually not equal, sorry. Oh yeah, I can say as long until it is hyphen greater than 10 or greater than equal 10, because I want 10 to be included. And I'll go here do, and I will just echo just like how I did here, -n, and show me $ counter space. And then after that, of course, counter must be updated. So we'll put a $, we'll put counter here, plus 1, and then done. And then echo. And I want you to pay attention here to those, how different they are, those two expressions here. I'm saying here, as long as counter is less than 10, I want you to keep going. And here said, until counter become greater than 10, I want you to continue the work here. If I want to just summarize, both of them are simply going to be getting the same job done. So you got those two options, and you are free to choose whatever works for you. So let's go ahead and give it a right. And here we go. Oh, I said greater than 10 without including 10. So I need to go and fix that if I want 10 to actually be included. Greater than instead of greater than equal. Because when it's equal, it's going to stop. I want to be greater than. So at 11, you should stop. Okay, what? WQ. Okay, let's clear. And let's run it again. And here we go. I got them to be identical. That's again how simply until and while works. And again, they're not really a big deal. While, until, it just, again, a common sense, how do you phrase it in English? That should give you an idea about how does it work. So I'm saying here, the first one, as long as, while simply means as long as the counter is less than 10, I want you to repeat the process. And then for the second one, he said, until counter became greater than 10, I want you to repeat the process. So as long as counter is less or equal 10, you're going to keep going until it gets to a point where it's greater than 10, what simply means when it's 11, I want you to stop. Okay, so depending on the problem that you're solving, depending on the application that you're writing this script for, you get to choose whatever simply works for you and fit for that need. And at this point, I can tell we covered the loops that this chapter is all about. And what's coming next is some little bit different topics related to loops. And the idea is very simple. We can have a loop inside a loop. And whenever you have a loop inside a loop, it's called a nested loop. And nested loops are usually used to process big data. If you have a data in a form of a table, then this is what's going to happen. I'll give you an example here. Let's say you have a file, and that file contains 10 lines, and each line contains 5 words. If you want to have access to each word by itself, and you want to take under consideration the fact that I want to read the line first, and then for each line you read the words, this is where you're going to have a loop to go through the lines, and then inside each line, inside the loop itself, you're going to go with another loop that will give you access to the files individually one by one. The outside loop is called the outer loop. The inside loop is called the inner loop, and it's, again, depending on what type of file, what type of information you're trying to process. What I'm going to do here, I'm just going to show you an example. If I want to just print asterisks, okay, just again asterisks. So I'm going to start with, let's use the C style. So I'm going to go for let's say R equal 1, and I'll say as long as R is less or equal, let's put it 5, and I'll go R plus, sorry, equal R plus 1. You go here, type do. And inside here, you're going to start with another for loop. And this time, I'm going to go with C equal 1, colon, as long as C is less or equal 5 again, and then C equal plus 1. And here, you go with do. I'm just curious about this for. Why is it not showing me a color code? That's scaring me a little bit. Echo -n. Show me the asterisk. I don't want to have a space after that. I'll just keep it as it is. And I'm going to come here and type done. And here, for the outside of the loop, I'm going to go and type echo to go to the new line. And then after that here, we'll type done again. Now, why is this not having a color code? Let's see if that's going to be working or not. Oh, look at that. Oopsie daisy. Shift 6. No. Command 6. Command Shift 6. Oh God. Now, this is where I need your help. If you have you know what? No, actually, I can do that. I'm gonna skip. I'm gonna go to my browser just to. What's the keyword here? Interrupt Linux command. What's the key? Control C. Okay, so that's supposed to be Command C in Command C. Nope. Control C. Yep. Here we go. This is an example for an infinite loop, by the way. Let's get back here and see why did I end up having this situation here. So it looks like he has an issue with the C here and the for loop itself. Maybe it's about spacing. Let's see. No, that's not the case. Oh, here it is. C plus 1. Okay, let's give this a try. Oh, here we go. Now it works. So you can see here, I was able to print those asterisks in the form of a table, and I was able to do that using what we call nested loops. Okay, so the last part of this class is going to be about processing or looping through files, data. We do have an example here to show you how we're going to be doing this. What I'm going to do, I'm going to leave this file and I'm going to work on a different file to just show you how is that going to work. So let's clear and let me create a new file. So I'm going to go, well, you know what, just for simplicity, let's just keep using the same file. I'm going to go at the bottom here. Let me get back. Now, what we're going to do, we do have a file. If I just want to show it to you here, cat etc pass wd. This is the file that I am trying to have access to. And this file, it simply showing me all the users and their group numbers, their ID numbers, and their names, and also show me what kind of shell that they are using. And this is, again, a long list of all the students, all I can see. This is not me, of course, but someone who's sharing my name here. But again, if I look, I should find my name somewhere here. So this is a file. It's part of the operating system that simply show you all the users and all their related information. So what we're going to do, we are going to try to have access to this file and process the data. We're going to try to loop through the items in that data. Now, in this case, it's very important to understand that the data in every single line, if you look at it, are separated with a colon. And every single line ends with a new line. So you can see here, the separator that we're going to use, if I want to have access to each line by itself, the separator that I'm going to be using is simply going to be the new line. Okay. Now, the problem is here that I cannot rely on spaces. And the reason why I cannot rely on spaces is because I do have spaces here. So if I'm going to use spaces as the normal separator, that simply means it's going to read this part and it's going to read this part individually. But instead, what I'm going to do, I'm going to try to ask, I'm going to make the script read the line where the new line is going to be my separator. And once I'm done with that part, I should be able to extract these lines one by one. And after that, I'm going to try to have access to each one of those words individually by using the colon as the separator. So let's break down this whole task into two different operations. The first one, let's try to have access to each line individually. So let's go back to my file and let's go ahead and start by changing the IFS. Wait a minute. IFS to equal, and I'm going to show you here the $\n. So what I'm telling you here, I'm trying to tell now the separator that we're going to rely on is simply only the \n. Okay, I don't want you to use the space. I don't want you to tap. \n is my separator at this point. And let's go ahead and let's type, for example, line equal 1. That simply will tell me how many lines I'm going to have in that file. And let's start with a for loop, and I will just create a variable entry in, and I'm going to use cat. So here we go, cat, and I'm going to come here and put etc pass wd. Okay, and now we go do, and then we go echo. Remember here, my point here is just I'm trying to show those lines. So I'm going to use the $ line, and I'll put an arrow, and I will put $ entry. And then I will type done. Oh, of course, I forgot. Since I'm using line here, I need to update it every time I go to a new line. So we'll go here and type line equal $, and we'll type line +1. Okay, so this is my first task here. I just want to see if I can show the line and the entry for it. So let's go ahead and exit. Now this is going to be a very long output. And here it is. It worked somehow, but is it showing me the numbers? Let me see if I can actually see that. Oh no, this is the cat. It's not actually showing me anything, is it? Oh, I didn't run it. Instead of running it, I'm supposed to do this. Where is it? No, no, no. Yes, this one. And here we go. So you can see here we have 139 entries here, and those are the files those are the lines in that file one by one. Okay, so that's half of the answer. Now, what do we do after that? We would like to, let's see here, what's the task? I'm just going through the PowerPoint to see what he wants us to do. Let's see here. Let me dictate question here, looking through a file. Okay, we went through the files, and then we use that. I'm looking at the PowerPoint and I'm really not understanding what is the purpose of the example that he's using, but I hope I will be able to do what I was trying to get done. I was trying to have access to each one of those values individually. So let's see if that's possible. Excuse me. Now the thing is, I believe if I want to fix this, I need to do the following. Let me just type I haven't tried this yet, but I'm going to give it a try right now. Inside this do while loop, I'm going to come here and type ifs equal the $ \n. Okay. And then here after that, I'm going to keep it as it is. Show me the line itself. I'm okay with that. And I'm going to come here and I'm going to say for, after that, I need to change the IFS because we're using the IFS as a separator. Oh, I don't think this is going to work. I don't think this is going to work. The problem that I'm facing right now is that how do I alternate the separator between the colons and the \n, which I don't know if I can get that done at this point. My idea here was that I was trying to create another loop inside the loop where I can use the colon as a separator and then uh, use the entry here. But how are you? No, that's not gonna work. I have a good feeling that this may not work. Oh, actually, it may actually work. Let's try that. Let's just try it. So I'm gonna go with IFS after it's gonna show me. Oh, you know what? Here, let me put it back the way it was. Let's see if I can get it to work the way it was before I continue. So I'm gonna go IFS equal $ \n. And here, after you show me the line, I want to change the IFS to equal the colon. And then we go here for, let's call it IN, and we use the $ here, entry. Entry. And then after that, I will go do, and I'll say echo, and I will go show me -n $I, and I'll just put a space, and I'll put done here. And let's see. I do have a feeling that this may not work, but let's just give it a try. So the idea here is that I'm going to go through the entries, and I'm going to try to separate them again with this, with a new line. And then after that, I'm going to use the colon here to separate them going through this for loop. And then the problem is, what's going to happen when it comes back with the loop? I'm not sure. Let me just go ahead and give this a try. If it's going to work, good. If it doesn't work, I'll try to get that covered later. So let's give this a try, and I'm crossing my fingers. And actually, that looks like it worked. It looks like it worked. Here, let's go back. I know it's a big mess, but let's see here. Look at this. Oh, I just forgot to put in a new line. So this is the root, okay? And this is me separating them based on the colons. You can see here, they're separated with the colons, and this is the second line. Let me just fix this really quick. Actually, that worked. I am happy about that. All I had to do here is just to come here and put an echo message. Now, if I go back here and type it again, you can see here, if I go to the top, this is again just to show you that I have the line that I read, and then I have all the words separated one by one. And now at this point, I can go and try to look at the words one by one and process them and see whatever I want to do with them. So you can see here, this technique that I just showed you here simply worked perfectly fine to show me how do I break down a file like the passwords file that we have in the etc. So that was a success. I'm happy about that. Now there are a few points here. I'm just going to mention them for the sake of mentioning them. We have keywords called a break and continue. And now again, if you have any background in programming, you should know what they do. Break will escape the whole loop. So you can have an if statement inside the body of the loop and check if a certain value equal a certain value. You just can leave the loop immediately. And sometimes you can skip one iteration. For example, I want you to go through all the values from 1 to 10, but I want you to ignore 5. So we can use continue to ignore 5. And that's what break and continue simply are. And that is pretty much, oh, the last part. If you want to redirect your outputs to a file, you can easily do that with loops. The only thing you have to do is that you have to use the direction or the piping operation at the end of the done operation. So what is that supposed to mean? Let's just go back here. Let me just take one of those loops that we have here. For example, this loop here, the last one, which is the one that takes really long time. It's a real long one. If I want to redirect this to an output, you just put the greater than sign here and you tell me where you want to put it. I'm not sure if I'm authorized to write anything in my current directory, so I'm just going to put outputs.txt, and I'm going to try to run it after that. So let's go ahead and run it. Yeah, I know it. Permission denied. I'm not allowed to do that. Let's go ahead and try to see if I can put it as at home. Oh, wait a minute. My outputs. So I'm going to come here and type home, backslash faculty, backslash AAL Janab, backslash my faculty. I misspelled something. Here we go. Janab, faculty. Okay, this should work now. Now, you would notice that the output of the last loop simply going to be sent to a file called my outputs. So let's give this a try. Let's hope it's going to work this time. And it worked. So you can see, I don't see the output of that file anymore. Now, if I just type cat, my outputs, and you can see them are printed on screen. So this will be the end of this chapter. And as I said, I'm going to work on, let me stop sharing my screen. Let me stop recording.